Hey everybody, welcome to the Face-to-Face Ministries podcast, the #1 resource for learning what it means to have a healed heart, connect more deeply with Jesus, and experience true and lasting transformation in your life. I'm one of your hosts, Kathy Little.
And I'm your other host, Melinda Wilson. Please hit subscribe so you don't miss the fresh content we're continuing to release. And while you're at it, we greatly appreciate your help in getting the word out by giving us a 5-star rating and leaving a quick review. You can also keep up with us by following our social media by searching face-to-faceministries.org on Facebook. That's no spaces, no numbers, and no caps. And on Instagram at face-to-face-min, and that's all one word.
We want to invite you to join us in our free Face-to-Face Heart Healing Network and in our premium network. Be part of a growing community of people just like you who are wanting to dive deeper into what it means to access the full benefits package of the cross and learning how to help others do the same.
Our team also offers one-on-one ministry sessions that can be done virtually, and you can also learn how to help others connect with Jesus and find healing in their lives through training we offer in the ministry model we use. And for more information about all of the resources, trainings, and events that we offer, visit face-to-faceministries.org. And while you're there, please sign up for our newsletter.
All right, so let's dive into today's episode.
Welcome to episode 126.
Welcome, everybody. We are thankful that you are here listening, whether it's your first time or if you've been around for a while and you've listened. Maybe some of you have listened to all of the podcasts and some of you twice. And we're always excited to hear feedback. We catch a lot of feedback when we're on the road, people who've heard about us because of the podcast. So thank you so much for listening and for sharing it with your friends.
And if this is your 400th time of listening or your 57th, don't rush past this. I know some people... A lot of people. So you won't even hear this anyway.
Let's just scrub
through until the guest. But please don't do that today.
Yeah, because we have some really fun things that are going on. And I will tell you that right now, this is the official update on the book that we are releasing in November. We have advanced reader copies out to several people, like big named people, for endorsements right now. And we're also working on what they call back matter, which is at the end of the book, and our acknowledgments where we've got a lot of people to thank, dedication and things like that. All of those last minute pieces are being done right now, and we are excited to be hearing back. We've already gotten a few endorsements in. Very, very thankful for the opportunity to put this compilation project together where we have 12 key leaders in the inner healing movement, founders, pioneers, directors, and they represent the top kind of headwaters that have fed a lot of the other streams of healing that exist today. I think you could talk to anybody in the inner healing arena and they would have some connection to at least one or more of the models that are represented in the book. We're very, very, very honored that we were able to put this together, and it's almost finished, and our release date is November 17th, and that is in conjunction with an event that we are doing online.
Yes, it is a symposium of a lot of the leaders and founders of the inner healing modalities or movements that you are familiar with, that we have interviewed on the podcast. They are going to be together in one place for the 3rd annual gathering, but this time we have several more coming that haven't been here before. And we're going to have an amazing 3-hour, basically like a webinar, but you might even be able to write them some questions that they answer live. But this is going to be really a first of its kind.
Yeah.
We can really say, Kathy, that we're making history.
Because I think both of us and probably some of our listeners have been to maybe some roundtable type things where there've been a couple or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different inner healing models represented, but it's been more of a collection of their individual models, and that's what they're talking about. But what we are doing with the symposium is inviting all of their different voices and expertise and their knowledge and their uniquenesses as individuals and ministry leaders to come together and talk about inner healing as a larger topic together in unity relationally, even though these leaders and founders don't all agree, maybe with methodology or philosophy for healing, but they all agree that Jesus is the healer, and all of their models point to Jesus for healing, and they are here together relationally connected, and they represent individual pieces of a pie. It's well, we can talk about our cover even for the book, just a little tease for the cover, because our cover art involves a mosaic, because this is about individual pieces representing unique sizes, shapes, and colors of individual models that are retaining their uniquenesses, but coming together to build something beautiful. And it's the bigger thing that they're building that will be focused on in the symposium.
I know this might be a little bit elementary, but as you were talking, I saw a dessert bar. And you said that they don't necessarily agree. I would put it in the format of they don't necessarily all approach it the same way.
Right.
Like, I like chocolate cake and you like carrot cake. Actually, I like both. But we have a dessert buffet, and not necessarily everyone's going to go for the lemon bars because they don't like lemon bars. But man, they're going to go for the tiramisu, the mocha, frappe, whatever. But here's the thing: is this delight, a table of delights that is going to serve everybody, that's going to help everybody. But we get to choose. Oh, I prefer that, and that's what these leaders and founders are coming together as. We're all serving the same purpose, but we maybe look a little bit, sound a little bit different. But really, this is the first time, Kathy, that we've done this.
Yeah.
And not that just we've done this, that anyone has done this, and then it's being broadcasted.
Right.
It's going to be available all around the world.
Right. We're going to be live streaming it on YouTube, which means we have global access, and we're very excited about that. The thing that you guys need to know right now is to save the date. November 17th. The symposium is going to be from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right, maybe it's daylight savings by then. But anyway, it's the Eastern time zone from 1 until 4. We're going to have 3 different panel discussions over those 3 hours, and an opportunity for you to hear some of the headwaters, the people that are really pioneering and running hard right now in this arena, and we want you guys to be there. And that's when we're going to release the book.
Yes,
I'm so excited about the book, because the podcast came because somebody said you need to write a book. And we thought, no.
I thought she said it to me, and I'm like, no. That my first response was no. And then I took it back to the Lord. Then it was like, Lord. And then he said film. And then that just, whoo,
there you go.
And now, though, it has circled back around to the book. And this is a miracle. I mean,
yes,
it is. There's nothing like this one in the world either.
Right.
It is. Y'all are a part of something historical. You get to be a part of it.
Yes.
You listeners. So thank you so much for being part of this.
Yep. Save the date. November 17th. So we actually have one of our authors from the book that we interviewed in today's episode. Her name is Marjorie Desgrosseilliers, and she is the current director of operations at Elijah House Ministries, and we are very honored. She is a fun person all around. We just absolutely adore her, and happy to call her friend. And we finally got her on the podcast. It's been forever, and we've tried to get it. And so we want to introduce you to Marjorie Desgrosseilliers, hear a little bit more about Elijah House. I know we did have an episode way back in season 1, but things are kind of shifting and changing there. They've got some new things that they're offering, and we're very excited for her to share a little bit more with you about this pioneering model, which really is one of the most foundational
John and Paula
models.
Sanford really were some of the grandmothers and a grandmother and grandfather of the whole inner healing movement. They were inspired by Agnes Sanford. You'll read more about that in the book that comes out in November. But these, John and Paula Sanford, really were a mother and father of inner healing movement, along with Francis McNutt.
And Agnes Sanford before them.
We're so honored, and there's no relationship between Agnes and John and Paula, but we're so honored to have Marjorie today. So let's hear this conversation.
So there's been a little bit of cackling and laughing. This is hilarious. We've had such a fun time getting this interview started. It's so much fun, and sometimes it's nice to just let people into a little bit of what goes on behind the scenes. So we'll just tell you that we've been laughing till tears have been coming, and have started the tape 100 times and have tried to clap on 3, and it just hasn't ever worked. So we're just going to roll with it, see what happens today. But Marjorie Desgrosseilliers, we're so happy to have you here. Marjorie is currently the executive director. What's your formal title here?
Director of Operations.
Okay, she is the Director of Operations at one of the pioneering models in inner healing, Elijah House Ministries. And we have been after her for months and finally got nailed down to spend some time with her in an interview today. So welcome to the podcast. And remember, it's Melinda.
You weren't supposed to tell anyone.
We're telling on her. Listen,
Yes.
Melinda, for some reason, is a hard name to remember. It's when I'm introduced to people, even 5 minutes later, they're like, "What's your name again?" Or Melissa, Melanie, Melody. I think the worst was Millicent. I'm like, I'm sorry, your grandmother or what? No offense to any Millicents, it's just not a name you hear much. But it's also a name that and Marjorie, you may be able to relate. There was nothing personalized with Melinda. Like you go to a Disneyland or, a museum and it has every other name, but not.
That's right.
There would be Melanie and Melissa and even Melody, never Melinda. So I always felt like I wanted to change my name to Linda or something. So true. It's like,
I think we need.
So maybe
we need inner healing.
Yeah,
I was going to say that we should set up some inner healing for you guys.
We need some heart healing.
Oh my gosh!
So thank you, Kathy, and thank you, Mel.
Yeah, perfect.
There you go, Marjorie. Thanks so much. We've been after you for a while to get you scheduled in, and finally got it rolling. And we're just going to have some fun. We already have been with you. It's such a joy to spend time with you, FaceTime here. But we would love to just kind of explore a little bit about who you are. Tell us your background in this. Like, how did you even get to where you are right now leading this organization?
It's a very long story, so I will cut it short or try to. I actually was. Do you want to start? I was born.
Let's start at the very beginning.
Well, very quickly, I actually was born in Germany. My dad was in the Canadian Armed Forces, so I am by birth a Canadian. Then when I was lived in Canada or in Britain until I was 4, moved to Canada, and then when I was 22, I came to the United States to go to college. And so I was a member of the Worldwide Church of God. Herbert Armstrong, I don't know if you guys have heard of him, but that was a long time ago. And so I went to a place called Ambassador College. And then ended up that I had the reason why I was able to stay in the United States, it was totally God, is that I was a power researcher. So I did a lot of research on databases like Dialog and LexisNexis, and I searched the internet before there was Netscape and colored pictures and all that kind of good stuff. It was like FTPing everywhere, and the yellow screen, the gray screen, yellow type with the block that goes over it. Yeah, that's how old I am.
Someone can relate to this.
Gosh.
Oh yeah,
I even know what you're talking about.
Okay, because I'm old. I'm just saying. No, I'm not. But what happened is that when I was a student, I worked in the library. I always had a thing with words and library and books, and I kind of just loved words, that kind of thing. So, but in the library, they were starting to get, technically speaking, they started to get databases and doing that sort of stuff. So I was like cutting my teeth on that. And then I found out there were people that did that kind of thing for a living. And so it ended up that the church, I was a member of the Worldwide Church of God, and so it was not a really big church. well, around the world, it was like 150,000 or so, but they needed me. I worked in editorial there. I also worked in the, writing scripts and doing research for our television program, The World Tomorrow. And it ended up that they wanted me to hire me full time after I was in college. And so they went through the whole process, the legal department, and I ended up getting a green card. So the only way I got a green card was because I was a member of the Worldwide Church of God, because it was a cutting edge kind of industry. And so they had to advertise it all the way through the United States. There was no other citizen that was a member of the Worldwide Church of God and to do what I did. So long story, that's how we ended up here. Then some of our friends moved up to Idaho, and we followed them just to kind of take a look, and we stayed and ended up going to church where John and Paula went to church. Actually, Andrea, their youngest, I met her through choir. And then we just became really good friends, and I became a part of their family. That was 1996, I think, 96, 97. And so I never looked back. And John always treated me as a daughter, and he always told me that every time he saw me. And I think that was ministering to my spirit. And so, one day he just, I don't know, I don't know how this happened, honestly. I think it was for such a time as this, and I'm really honored to be here. I really am honored to be here as the director of operations.
And you're talking, just for our audience sake, just to make sure they know, you're talking about John and Paula Sanford.
Oh, yes, John and Paula
and
Sanford.
they are the founders of Elijah House Ministries.
Yes.
And they are pioneers, because Melinda, you've bumped into them way back when you were a wee child, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. I did. I mean, of course, when you're meeting people that are famous, quote unquote, in certain circles as a child, you don't care, you don't know the significance. And then looking back, and I've shared some of that story, testimony of not really realizing the DNA that was imparted to me at such a young age, and meeting these people. I mean, even talking to my dad, he's like, yeah, we hosted them and I would show them around the camp, and I was the one. And I'm like, oh man, of course it'd be different now, meeting people like that. I would pay attention and ask questions, but even having been in their presence is pretty significant. So I'd love to hear, Marjorie, just what Elijah House has meant to you as far as healing. Of course, that's what we're all about. But I think it's perhaps a trifold question, or twofold. Those tend to be my questions. I ask like many in one. Kathy's like, Melinda, you started on one thought and then said something else. I'm like, I totally do, because I don't have this question written down. But what I'm getting at is, we would love to hear your own healing journey through Elijah House, and then even a bit more about the modality that Elijah House, like how they operate in, what does it look like to experience healing with Elijah House. But first,
Sure.
A little of your own testimony of healing, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Well, I don't think my husband would mind this, but when you're going through life, my husband and I have been married for almost 36 years. And so when I was 30 something, I forget how old I was, but my husband Michael, he ended up getting depressed. So he was dealing with depression, learned he'd been dealing with depression since the beginning. And so I was driving down the street. I was driving down Hayden Avenue here. However many of you have been to Idaho and been up this way. But I was driving down Hayden Avenue, and I was going by this church that's New Life Community Church. And all of a sudden, and I'm bawling my eyes out, because my husband has been home. He's not really. I mean, he's just. When somebody's in the depths of depression, I don't know how many of you are, or how many of you have lived with somebody who is. It's really tough, and you can be in love and that kind of thing, but you start to feel lonely after a while, and there's a danger in that, because there's just doors that can be opened, and so I found myself in a situation that. That was, really bothering me. And so I'm driving down the freeway, or driving down the road, and all of a sudden my car, the wheel, it turns by itself. into this church parking lot. And I had been coming out of Worldwide Church of God, going to New Life. I'm not sure why, but my car ended up parked in front of New Life Church. I'm like, this is interesting. And I felt to go in and go into the lobby of the church. And I sat there and I went up to the window and I said, "Do you have a counselor here? Do you have anybody I could talk to?" And and so the lady goes, well, you need an appointment, but let me check. So I'm sitting on the bench, and so sitting on the bench there, I'm like, there's thoughts going through my head. I just need to get up and go because I don't want them to think badly of me because of this situation. And then all of a sudden, Ivanka May, who's a long time prayer minister with Elijah House, had been for a long time. She comes around the corner, happens to have an open time. And God said, that was one of the few times I heard the audible voice of the Lord. He said, "You can trust her." And
Wow.
so and so she took me back to her office, just so kind. And being growing up in the church that I did, I didn't really understand, I didn't experience people actually praying out loud over you. I mean, somebody other than a minister. And so sitting in front of her, she starts reading my mail. And basically I told her what was going on. She goes, "Oh, well, that's called spiritual adultery." And I was so relieved that it was a thing. you know, that I didn't know what the problem was. But there was this young man in Worldwide that, we did a lot of singing together and stuff. And so my heart was pulled in that. Nothing happened ever, but it was. So spiritual adultery is when in your heart you begin to maybe be pulled towards a person who's maybe not your husband, or somebody that you can get entwined with, like us, have a soul tie with, right? Somebody that you're getting maybe intimate. That's what happens over the internet sometimes too. If you're not careful, that can happen. But anyway, I digress. And so I was so relieved to hear that it was a thing, and she explained what it was, and she prayed for me with that. And that caught my attention because there was no judgment. There was no, are you reading your Bible? There was no, it was, I see you, I see your heart, I see where you're at. And that literally, I get up and I leave there, I go home, and that saved my marriage.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Come on.
And so you asked about the modality. So there's a story that I like to, because it went to my heart. I was making decisions in my heart about who I was and all that kind of stuff. But the best story, if I can, about what inner healing or what heart healing or what Elijah House actually does. Many years ago, there was a man who came for prayer ministry at Elijah House. His wife had told him that if you don't, you need to go, because if you don't, I'm going to divorce you. And sometimes we get those. But what had happened is he had three young sons, and he was very much not abusive, but just, you're a boy, you shouldn't cry. If you cry, I'll give you something to cry about. And so they're 5, 6, and 8, I think they were at the time. And so he was really not seeing their heart, and he was being a very tough father on them. And so his wife had come to the point after years of this that she said, "We can't have you doing this anymore." So in the prayer ministry, what happened is that the prayer minister started just asking some questions, but it came out that as a young boy, his father was that way with him. So he would do something to please his father, and it was never good enough. It was never something that he could attain to what his father wanted. And in his heart, without knowing it, he was probably 5 or 6, he made the decision, "I will never be like my father. I will never treat my kids as my father has." And so the prayer minister led him through some things. Basically, it's like, uh, so you basically have made a vow. "I will never," or "I will always," two words that's a clue that you've made a vow in your heart. And so because of that, it John talks about how we sow something. There's a law of sowing and reaping in the spirit. And so when you sow something like that, the law of return, it grows. And so what you vow, you become, you vow you're not going to do something, and you literally, it's happened. We've seen it over and over and over again, that because of the laws that God has put into order, into place, we reap what we sow or what we say. So it gets worse. So anyway, what the prayer minister did is he went through a time of forgiveness as much as he could. You know, sometimes we need $1 worth of forgiveness, and all we have is 2 cents. He forgave as much as he could, and then he repented, and they took it to the cross. They broke the vow, and so ended up that, so this was in an intensive, ended up he went home. We heard from him probably a couple months later, and he said he's a completely different person because he doesn't do that anymore. Because when we make those vows in our heart, that part of our heart stays stuck. And one of the things that we say at Elijah House is we evangelize the unbelieving parts of a believer's heart, is what
Come
we
on.
do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so that story briefly says what we do. It's like we look at something and we cut it at the root. And that's
Yeah.
why heart healing works. Because
Yeah.
it's not just it's not looking at the result or the fruit. Like, it's going, where did that come from? How did it start? Let's
Yeah.
cut that off at the root.
Yeah, it's we've talked about this before on the podcast, that Gabor Mate, who did the Wisdom of Trauma documentary, who was talking about how we need to not look at what, like in a prison setting, it's really easy to look at the inmates and say, well, what did they do? But the question is, what happened to them? Like, that's a much better question, is like, what happened to you that caused these behaviors to come up in you? Because it's very easy to write people off for their behaviors, but they didn't start out that way. There's a reason that something shifted. There's damage that was occurred. And so often, Paul Young, author of The Shack, talks about this, how, experiencing an immense amount of abuse as a child, the abused will become the abuser. And
Exactly.
It's just kind of that cycle that goes. So that's really important to understand those variables that will set somebody in that course. And when you can remove those things that are tying you to that, then it's a game changer for the individual. But I wanted to circle back to this whole thing about vows. And I know you guys also talk about vows and judgments. Mm-hmm. I find it really interesting that what happens, like you did a great job explaining that, like you get stuck at that place. It's almost like we become like what we behold, right? And so if we're focused on not being like my dad, like my mother, like the abuser, and that is your focus, and you're linked to that person, then of course that's going to have an impact on you, right? So,
Yeah.
And how many people, I know I've said it before. I mean, how many people are listening to us right now that have said, "Oh, I've said that. Like, I never want to be like my mother. I'll never do that. I'll never be like him. I'll never be like her. That'll never happen." But you're focusing all your energy on not being that. All the while, that's got your attention, and that's going to be implanted in you because you're fighting so hard against it. And it's really strange how that works.
It is, yeah, because it's like you literally make a decision in your heart. There's a decision that you've made, and that's the decision that needs to be dealt with. Once you deal with that decision and you remove it, the root of that, you cut it at the root, that's when you become truly free. And we have seen that over thousands and thousands and thousands of people since we've been around since 1973. So,
and to put it in an elementary and kind of like, I don't know, when we're trying not to focus on something, or there's a piece of cake there that we've already had one. It's like, don't eat it, don't eat it, don't eat it. What do we end up doing? We end up eating it. And it's actually easier just to give in than to keep fighting against that thing. It's like, oh, I'm just going to give in because now I don't even have to resist the temptation because it's too hard to resist. And it's like the changing of neural pathways. We have to give ourselves a different direction. And, they do that whole thing of don't think about an orange. And then, of course, what do? And even that power of suggestion of, when I was looking for a red 4Runner a few years ago, what do you start seeing? All I saw was red 4Runners. And so we put that in our mind. But it's what are we paying attention to? What are we focusing on? but giving ourselves something else it's changing that neural pathway. I believe all inner healing, I mean, it's a big statement, but it's true, because I think all inner healing is changing the neural pathways. And you're talking about heart healing.
It's the transformation of the mind.
It is. It's like, I used to be traumatized by this particular, like seeing a man with a beard and overalls, because that was an abuse situation that I had as a child. That's not really, I'm just making it up. And that's what my brain gets used to experiencing. And it's a limbic response. It's that the sympathetic nervous system that's responding to something without even conscious thought. And until that neural pathway is changed and healed, and we're talking about bringing healing to that place, seeing where Jesus was, or whatever the process is. Elijah House is not exactly like Emmanuel, but let's just, be honest that it's bringing Jesus into whatever that situation is.
That is the key, Melinda. That is the key, because yes, there is that portion, but the thing is, it has to be sanctified in order to be transformed. And so if there's a decision, because as children, we make decisions in our heart, and not even know it.
Mm-hmm.
We make a decision even from the womb,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so we go away not even realizing we did that, but we're still bound by that decision that my dad is mean, or my mom is mean, or I'll never be like my mom. For me, it was like, I'll never be like my mom. And so I would bump up against that in my life, also in my career, and other things, that I would much rather work with men than work with women, until I got to the root of, I made that decision from the womb that I was never going to be like my mom. Then once you take that to the cross, then begins the job of, okay, I need to change and it is the neural pathway that really needs to change, because you've been in that habit for so long. So yes, I totally agree with that. There is that portion that comes in, but the sanctification is what leads to transformation.
Hey, pardon us for the quick interruption. I know you guys are enjoying this conversation with Marjorie, but we do have 2 trainings that are coming up we want to let you guys know about if you're out on the west side of the country. We've got Twin Falls, Idaho, October 14th and 15th. That is a Foundations Basic Course, Level 1. And then 2 weeks later in Montana, Polson, Montana, right on the south end of Flathead Lake. You cannot beat the scenery in either of these locations. Montana is going to be October 28th and 29th, and that is a more advanced level 2 training. We would love to have you guys join us.
And you could come to both.
There you go.
Go to one, and then 2 weeks later go to the next one, and then awesomely, is that a word? Awesomely, we actually have a mentoring track
right out of the second training
in November. So come and get fully equipped this October, November.
All the information is on our website, facetofaceministries.org/training-events, and we will see you there.
Well, so much of that is unconscious, and it's in our nervous system. Like I was saying, an example is, I don't like spiders, and Kathy knows this well. That's putting it mildly.
That is a gross understatement.
That is a gross understatement.
Let me just qualify that. Gross understatement.
I was in the water just up to my knees yesterday, and what was floating in the water to my limbic brain, to my automatic nervous system, was a spider, which is impossible that they would be. At least, please don't tell me. If you know of spiders that live under the water, just don't tell me. I don't want to know. But it was an automatic response. It was faster than conscious thought. So it was my right brain, that faster than conscious thought, I was clearing my throat, but
this is a traumatic moment for you.
No.
So we're just going to listen, because you're talking about spiders. It's not surprising that it's like your autonomous,
no, it was.
Reaction.
And
okay.
I was like, and if I had taken a beat to actually, and my friend who was with me was like, well, that's a trauma response, an automatic response. Not that I needed inner healing in that moment, but it was interesting. And then we just laughed at it, but it was interesting I didn't have any control over that because it's this unconscious conditioning, and at what we could call a program, as far as my brain conditioned to the limbic system that is like the bodily response to something that I didn't even think about. Now, if I had taken a beat and gone, oh, well, obviously it's just those little dandelion things or whatever. Anyway, whatever it was. But that's what I'm like, that automatic response to that automatic fear response to changing that neural pathway to being able to see something, and I can see a spider and not have a automatic body response. Now, people, please do not point me to counselors that deal with arachnophobia. I'm not asking for that. This was a moment. I don't always respond like that. I'm being full disclosure because that's who I am. I don't like spiders. Don't joke about them. But that was just something that happened that I didn't in the moment. It happened automatically. And so we're looking at changing those neural pathways so that we don't have that automatic response to whatever the triggering situation is.
I think whatever we are, the whole body, the body, mind, spirit, and emotions. You take it all together. So whatever you do, whether it's a heart decision, whatever happens, it affects every single part of who we are. It really does.
That's true.
Yes.
Yeah, you can't divide it. You
cannot.
Having said that, there are so many emotional issues that we carry that manifest in our physical body because of that very thing. Like, whether it be muscle tension or headaches, or it's a gallbladder issue or a heart issue or a gut issue, there's so many different ways that your body's going to process it one way or the other. And so if it's got no alternative but to work itself out in your physical body through some ailment or disease or illness, a weakened immune system, whatever it is, there's so many different ways because we are holistic.
Totally.
We are holistic. We can't, and the other thing, we can't ever say that, hey, well, this is no big deal to me because it happened in the past, because your past is always going to be part of your present,
Kathy,
until you deal with it.
Right.
It's never really your past.
Yeah.
So,
I'm waving my white hanky. Yeah. I got a witness. Exactly. I'm so glad you said that. That's just so important because, say that again, Kathy, that if you feel it's not a big deal, say it again. I think it's so important to repeat.
Well, we think it's no big deal because it happened in our past, and we're like, that's no big, it's not, it's in my past, so it's all done. But your past is never truly part of your past until that pain has been processed and dealt with. Otherwise, it continues to affect you today with triggers, physical ailments, reactions, whatever. That implicit memory of something that happened way back, like, Melinda was just talking about that implicit reaction, but you can be reacting to something in the present and not even realize that you're actually drawing on something that's hurt you in the past. And you'll carry that into the future unless you. And
you will. And don't you guys find? Okay, I'm the interviewer now.
Okay, go for it.
And haven't you guys found that in doing the kind of heart healing and inner healing ministry that we do, that and we've seen it over and over, and I think you guys probably have too, is that when people get healing for that, whatever we're doing with them, that the body stuff happens in the body that they actually get healing for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
These things disappear.
I mean, I am a testimony of that, and I won't.
Come on,
45 seconds, you can time me. But I had chronic back issues from 1993 until about 2012, 14. I mean, where I.
Oh, no. Later than that. We were still in North Carolina, but it was probably.
Yeah, things would flare up, and
2018.
There was a literal physical issue, a herniated disc, from an injury, from an original injury that happened in 1993. Like, that was legitimate. But I'm telling you, it got to the point. I understand acute pain, I understand chronic pain, and I had to leave jobs because of it. I had to have people literally get me out of bed, mostly Kathy being an incredible friend at some points in my life where I couldn't function normally. And, in the process of that, I've always been on a healing journey, like not like acutely, intensely all the time, but certainly through my life, it's been a through line, and been very mindful of my own heart. And just over the process of a few years, my back was completely healed. I mean, people knew me as like the person with the back problem for years. Like, Melinda, how's your back? That's the first question they would ask me after they hadn't seen me for years. And always carrying pillows around with me and never being able to lift luggage and all of that stuff. That was horrible because I'm a strong person and usually very healthy. And so that was, though, an illustration, an example of receiving more healing in my heart, becoming more integrated in my own heart and synchronized, so to speak. And my back has been healed ever since. And I see that as a miracle of spirit, soul, body coming together in that synchronicity. And because if you look outside the kingdom, our body is aging, our body is decaying, all that Paul says, but actually living in kingdom, we should be regenerating, not degenerating. That's my belief, is that we're getting better. Things are getting better, including my body. It doesn't have to get, that's a whole other conversation that we could have. But as we continue to pursue kingdom, what does it look like living in kingdom now? Then it lines up. Spirit, soul, body lines up with the Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, in wholeness, in oneness, in no separation. We are one, as Jesus said, and getting to experience that now while we're on this earth dimension. And what does it look like to experience eternity now and kingdom now? And so the heart healing is such a huge part of that. And I'm also, we do talk, neither of us are dietitians or anything, but certainly looking at living holistically. So eating a healthy diet, exercising, getting out in nature, learning how to set boundaries with our self and our bodies. And so this is a holistic thing. It's not just get inner healing and then, go and eat junk and do whatever you want to your body because I'm just doing all this work. Well, we're not going to even want to do that because, like, I love my body. I mean, even some of that healing, those people that have had issues with I don't like my body, that also gets healed as we do heart healing. And then I'm going to want to treat my body better as the temple that God says it is, because I'm seeing myself. So this is all intertwined and like, it's not linear. It's all this, and no one can see my hands, but I talk with my hands, but it's all just this, the infinity loop or whatever you want to call it. It's a nonlinear journey with Jesus, and there's nothing linear about him either. I did want to ask Marjorie, and I don't know if we haven't discussed this, but Elijah House, where does the name come from?
So when John and Paula, they were pastors in Wallace. I don't know how long ago that the name Elijah House came, but John's heart was to start a school of the prophets. And so that's why he called it, I believe that's where the name Elijah House came from. But when he and Paula, they were in Wallace. It's a mining town, a silver mining town up in, by Kellogg, up in Idaho, or it's right around Coeur d'Alene, about an hour east of Coeur d'Alene. And so they were up in this mining town, and the town actually had the businesses. Half of the business in the town were actually brothels, and most of the businesses served the needs of the brothels, the restaurants, the bars, and that kind of stuff. And the last one closed, I think, in 1990 it was early 1990s, believe it or not. But so they were there in the 70s, I think it was, and so people were, alcohol and all this kind of stuff, and they were working to get people healed, and so but they realized it wasn't sticking. So they could get them to a certain point, but people would fall right back into what they were doing. And so John realized that if he was going to start a school of the prophets, he had to get the prophets healed first.
Yes.
And so that's why. So in 1973, actually, he started at his kitchen dining room table, in Coeur d'Alene when they moved with their 6 kids, started Elijah House, and they started doing counseling and prayer ministry, actually is what they called our prayer counseling. And so that's where it started, and then they incorporated in 1975. But that's where Elijah House came from. He really wanted to start a school of the prophets.
I would love to hear a little bit more about the nuts and bolts or key components that Elijah House uses, or some of your tools that you use, how you go about practically bringing healing. And I know you do a lot of training and stuff like that, but could you just give us an overview of the ministry?
Sure. You mean like as far as doing the counseling or getting
Well,
people?
just some of the. I'd love to just have our audience get acquainted with, like, what is our vision and how do we go about it as
Oh,
an
okay.
organization?
So a day in the life of Elijah House kind of thing.
Yeah,
Oh, gotcha.
sure.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. So Elijah House, what we do, so here's the thing. Many people they feel hopelessly stuck in life, or they know somebody who is, right? And so they feel frustrated because they can't get out of it. They bump up against ceilings. I mean, we all do it. There's things we want to go, and we just can't seem to just get over the threshold. And or we have such a heart. We see the pain around. So many burden bearers, people, servants. They want to see people healed, right? So, but what Elijah House does is we have heart healing courses. We have something Elijah House Schools. That's it. ElijahHouseSchools.org. So we have online schools where we take people through the different tenets of Elijah House, like explaining what inner vows are, like, I will, I won't, never, I will, I always, that kind of thing, or you always, or they always. There's Bitterroot expectations, so, and then Bitterroot judgment. So that's kind of in-house Elijah House. But a very quick demonstration of that is, when my husband and I got married, I would be in the kitchen and fixing dinner, and I turn around and go pick something up, and what was there was gone, right? So I grew up. My mother I don't clean up well enough, right? And so that hooked into, oh, why are you cleaning up after me, right? Because I wasn't good enough. And then my husband, his mother, and she's passed now, but really he judged his mother for not cleaning the house. Well, she had 7 kids, okay, so whatever. But he judged her for not cleaning the house, so that's why he went up cleaning against me, went up cleaning after me. And so it was a marriage in heaven, his expectation and my judgment, or his judgment and my expectation married. And so we had a big whoop. And so we teach people about these things, about, there's lies that we believe about ourselves. We talked about some of that stuff earlier. And so we have we have a 201, which is 27 lessons, and we have a 202, which is 25 lessons. But essentially, through those courses, many thousands have found peace and freedom, and they're also being equipped to help others do the same. And we also have around the country, we have facilitated schools, video facilitated schools. So we have like 60 facilitators around the country that are doing that. We have 11 offices, other offices in 11 different countries. We have 3 more offices coming up. But remember, I said it was write, teach, and counsel. So we write about it. We have our series called Transforming the Inner Man, a 4-book series that people can read if they really want to get a 30,000-foot view of what we're talking about here, what Elijah House does. That really is the place to start, that 4-book series. And then we have our teaching. So we go out and we teach something called the Keys to Transformation, where people get a modicum of healing as they're going through that. And that's like a weekend course. And then we have counseling. And so we've shifted our business model recently in that we're going digital. Elijah House is going digital. So we're going with podcasts. We're going to be doing webinars, and some of those are free webinars. And so, I don't want to date this podcast, but man, guys, unless you've been living under a rock for the last 3 years, everybody on the planet has been traumatized.
Come
You know,
on.
and we talked about this earlier. There is a tsunami of people coming into the
Yes.
church that are going
Yes.
to need heart healing. And
Yes.
so we need to be ready. So that's what we're doing. We really felt like the Lord is saying we're going to take it digital. We're going to be focusing on that, giving resources to our facilitators, resources to our international offices, resources to pastors in churches. Guys, we have pastors that are calling us because Mr. Joe Difficult guy comes back to the church, and because he got healing from an Elijah House minister, and his family's happy now, and like, what the heck happened there? Oh, Elijah House. Hey, so you know what? How can I get this for my How can I get this for my team? So we're building a project by which we're a pilot project right now called Taking Elijah House to the Churches. At least that's the loose title of it. But we're helping pastors in churches heal their team so that they can heal their church, so that they can go into their community. I was talking to one pastor on the phone. His name's Sam. God, Sam, if you're listening to this, I'm telling about you. But he gets on the phone. He says, hey, so you know, my wife was in the shower the other day, and she yells out. She says, I've got shame. You got to come and heal shame off of me. And he's like, okay, on the way to the bathroom. And he says, Lord, how do I pray shame off of my wife? And he heard, call Elijah House. So he's talking to me. He calls Elijah. He says, okay, so I saw, he went to our website. I saw you had this thing on shame. And you know what? We got it. And my wife watched it. And then she had 40 other people watching it. And so now I have 40 more people, and we're playing it over. And guess what? We're going to play it at a community center in our community. And we're inviting the community to come, because his first love was missionary work. So
Wow.
it's like that's what's happening. And it's like more and more we've got people calling us and saying, how do I get my team healed?
Yeah. Yeah.
So in a day of Elijah House, it's like we just never know.
There
I
is
never
no
know what's going to
typical
happen
day.
from day to day.
Yeah.
No, there isn't.
What a fun job.
And it's like it's the greatest adventure in the world. And I think you guys and anybody else who's in heart healing, who's in the heart healing space, can say it is the greatest adventure. It's jumping off a cliff every single day. Because here's the thing: when we do our prayer ministry and when we do stuff like that, it is Holy Spirit led. We don't have a formula. We have something in front of us that people are saying, here's what they're dealing with, but we look at the fruit. What is the fruit? And that helps us be able to go to the root. But the thing is, people have to, the most effective healing is when Holy Spirit talks to that person and takes them to that place in their heart, and then they're able to, and Holy Spirit does it. That is so effective, and the healing that happens is just amazing.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know if that's what you wanted, but that's where I went.
Well, I don't know if there was a want, but I just, in hearing you, it's so exciting, because anyone that is involved in any kind of healing, whatever it looks like, has to cheer this, because this is Jesus doing the work. And we may use different language than you, but it really boils down to helping people encounter Jesus, helping people encounter Holy Spirit, Father, and revealing truth, revealing how he feels about them, and changing everything. And that transformation, that is what is happening as we encounter Jesus. That we've made that, we used to make that our tagline, one encounter with Jesus changes everything. And I still believe that to be true. If someone has a genuine encounter with the interactive, tangible, living presence of Jesus, you can't go away unchanged.
Exactly.
It leaves an imprint on you.
It totally does. It totally does.
And one of the beautiful things that we're watching happen, and it has been Melinda's and my passion for a few years now, and we've seen it transpire, is to bring all of you healers together, the pioneers and founders together relationally, and we've done that, and we're doing it again in November, and want to make sure everybody, I mentioned this in a couple, we're starting to leak this in podcasts, that November 17th, we're going to be doing a symposium, panel discussions with these key leaders in the inner healing movement. And we're releasing our book finally. And Marjorie has written the chapter for Elijah House, and she's one of our authors in that project. And it is the only one of its kind. where all of y'all have come together and submitted, have contributed to it, and bringing all of the different voices in this massive movement of inner healing together. And, God's doing something way bigger than us. It's way bigger than any of our individual models. It's way bigger than our individual prayer ministers. And, when we really value and honor what each of us carries, and love each other well, and encourage each other and support each other, because we need each other. You're right. This is tsunami of need. It's coming to everybody's doorstep, and
Yep.
we're doing the same thing you are in our own model of preparing people to be able to handle the need, because we need a lot more people raised up. I mean, that's why we're doing what we're doing. It's why you're doing what you're doing. All of us that are in this arena are finding ways to train up other people so that we can duplicate and multiply, because it's massive. The world is traumatized.
Massive.
And we have to,
Yes.
we have to do better. We need more. We need more people. So that's really exciting, Marjorie. I'm really glad that we had a chance to connect with you and see you. And I had this question that popped into my head while you were sharing just a moment ago, and I don't want it to totally throw you for a curve or anything, but
Give me what you got.
I like throwing people for curves. Do it, Kathy.
I know.
Come on. Okay.
Well, I just
Wait, we just need to show. I wish you could see Marjorie. She's just like, come on, bring it on, baby.
bring it.
Remind me of me.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually borrowing from some friends of mine have a podcast for more in the worship leader space, and they asked this question at the end of their podcast to their guests, and it's basically, if we were to give you a microphone and you had every church leader, every ministry leader, every people who are in a place of potential influence and are ministering to people on some level, if you had all of them in one room, how would you encourage them? How would you encourage them? Just what would you, if you had the floor, like you've got everybody's ear, what would you want them to know today?
The first thing that comes to mind is something that Kevin Zadai, I don't know if you know who he is, but one of the things, by the way, he was my steward on a plane once.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. He was a steward on a plane. And when I saw him on his podcast or whatever he does, I'm like, I know that guy. I mean, whatever. But he says something, and I think because what's going on in the world, there is such a crushing, there's such darkness right now, because it seems to be that it's overwhelming. But the thing is that he says, tell the church, tell the leaders. Jesus told him to tell them, and that is, you guys are doing way better, very much better than you think you are. So just keep your eyes on Jesus. It doesn't matter what anybody's saying around you. And I'm saying this because I've walked this the last year and a half. It doesn't matter what anybody says. Close your eyes to that and keep your eyes on Jesus. I don't know what I would have done. And keep your circle small, the people that you trust. Listen to them about who you are, not about what anybody else says, so you're doing much better than you think you are. Thank you for what you do and for standing.
Wow.
That's
sweet.
That is awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, that's good. Good encouragement, because sometimes it feels overwhelming. It just feels overwhelming.
Yeah.
It does.
Marjorie, thank you. You are, the problem or the only detriment of podcast is people can't see you. And you have such a magnetic personality, and just how you've engaged even through Zoom or whatever this is, Squadcast. It's like, we just want to reach through there and give you a hug, and just inviting and warm and very come into this space. And so we're so glad that that you've shared your time with us, shared your heart with us. Yeah. And I feel your sincerity and just your down to earthness and your passion. And your authenticity. Really appreciate that about
Yeah.
you, Marjorie.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much. It's been an honor.
I have one last thing. How can people find out more about Elijah House? Where should we send our listeners to get information about what you guys are doing?
Sure. So we do have a Facebook page. We're on Instagram. We're starting on TikTok. Elijah House USA is, I think that's what that is. But you can always go to our website, www.elijahhouse.org. And as I said, if you want to learn more about how to learn about, inner healing and get training in that, it's elijahhouseschools.org.
Sweet. Well, we'll be sure to put that in the show notes as well, so people can find you. And hoping to see you at the Healer Gathering. Like I said, we're very excited about what God is doing amongst all of us that are in the fight together, linking arms, raising up an army of heart healers together. And thank you so much for your contribution to that. We know you guys paved the way. I mean, you are really, your ceiling is our floor. We continue to move from what John and Paula have done. And just for reference, John and Paula with Francis and Judith McNutt and Agnes Sanford. I mean, these are the people that started this big ball rolling to the movement that we are all part of right now. Mm-hmm. So we honor them and have great level of respect for all of the sacrifice and investment that they have made. And Elijah House in particular, we really just honor the heritage that ministry represents. And we bless you for carrying the torch forward. It's no small task what you've stepped into. And it's a really a big deal. So we're really grateful for you and for Elijah House and all that you guys are carrying as part of the inner healing movement. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you for joining us today. If you're enjoying this podcast, please share it with your friends.
And please stay tuned for more great content coming your way.